Welcome back, everyone, to Coach to You. I'm your host, Coach Regina, and I am back with another video. Now, today we're going to go ahead and jump into part two of our previous video, which is your nervous system ready for your dreams? Okay, you guys, I told you that I was going to do part two, so let's go ahead and get started. Although I'm a student of psychology, I am not a licensed healthcare professional. All information and content on my channel stems from my own personal experience and extensive research on the topic. If you feel like you have a mental health condition, seek the guidance of a medical professional. Okay, guys, so now that the disclaimer is out the way, let's go ahead and jump into part two. All right, so in the last part, the last thing I talked about was your body prioritizing safety over your goals. Doubt is just a physical sensation and is not a fact. And then there is no respect of persons. I even utilize the scripture reference to kind of help for those who are also believers as well. Okay. All right, guys. So now what we're going to talk about in video two is the role of the nervous system here. So I gave you the five parts to the nervous system, but I really didn't get into their role and what they play. In the previous video, I spoke about the prefrontal cortex. I told you about the amygdala, the reticular activating system, the basal ganglia, and the autonomic nervous system. Now, what I want to talk about, guys, now is I want to talk about their role. Now, if you're like me, I'm very big on understanding things. You can't just tell me something and then I just take it nilly willy. I like to do my own due diligence and my own research. So basically, you can also kind of put that to rest if you wonder, like, hey, I'm not a licensed healthcare professional, but I have a podcast on mental health awareness. Why? Because I do my due diligence, I do my research, and I don't just go based off of stuff that AI or Google say. I go step by step by step by step to make sure that I am giving you guys definitive information that has been researched and backed. Okay. All right. So now, before I get into those five parts, I want to talk about a little bit here just about um, how we were initially, created for homeostasis. Okay. So basically, I mentioned earlier that your system, your amygdala, your prefrontal cortex, your reticular activating system, it doesn't care about your goals. It doesn't care about, me wanting to have a podcast or anything like that. Your system is designed to keep you alive. It is a system that is used for evolution, and we ultimately inherited ancestral parts from our that literally we are trying to change or evolve to match our own state of reality. In the process, we're overcoming things that were ultimately inherited. Okay, take time to process that, because I'm not gonna lie. When that first came to me, I was like, "Wait, what?" Yeah. So ultimately, you think you're living your life in its entirety, but you're living past inherited traits and archetypal patterns that come from generations, guys. And if you don't have this awareness of it, you will find yourself reacting to situations that you're essentially supposed to process and understand. So homeostasis is essentially the universal biological law that states all living organisms will actively resist change to maintain internal stability. Yeah, you think that you don't want to do certain things just because you don't want to do them, but ultimately your system is literally biologically wired for homeostasis to keep you in a state of calm, relax, and chill out. So basically, the biology of that is that your body has a set point. That's what I discussed earlier in video one. For everything, your temperature, your weight, your baseline level of wealth, your goals, your visibility, as well as your stress levels. The reality is, when you try to grow, make more money, have healthy relationships, or move into a new environment, your body triggers an alarm system because you are leaving your biological comfort zone. That's what I mentioned earlier in the other video. Your baseline. Your body tests you by making you feel anxious or tired, trying to drag you back to your old baseline. Growth requires surviving this temporary discomfort until your body creates a new normal. This is why people tend to give up on their goals and they feel like it's not for them. It's not necessarily the case. When you're setting new goals, your goals ultimately aligns with your values and your sense of self-worth, and ultimately what you are desiring to do in life. Okay. If you never persist past your baseline, you won't be able to have the awareness as to what you have the capacity to handle. Okay. So that was the homeostasis. I had to get that out the way there because ultimately, when we're experiencing life, sometimes we think that the world is crashing on us. I used to be the one feeling like things were against me, feeling like people were against me, feeling like I wasn't loved, the different things like that. But what I didn't have the awareness is that people who have wealth, people who have healthy relationships, supportive environments, and different things like that, they either inherited that or they outgrew their old state and persevered to get to where their desired reality is. Many of us have what we desire right there at the forefront, but we must persevere towards it in order to inherit it. Okay. Now, that was the homeostasis. Now we're going to persevere and we're going to get to what's called your cognitive bandwidth of the prefrontal cortex. That's the one that I just told you. That's the first one that I want to discuss because if you don't have the awareness of this one, yeah. Okay, so basically, a prefrontal cortex is basically the part of our brain that it acts as the CEO. Okay, for big goals. It says we're doing this, right? We're actually going to go through this. Okay, and I'll use layman terms because I'm using a lot of information on our brain cells and our neurological and our biology and different things like that. So I don't want to lose you guys. So I'll kind of use a little bit of layman terms to break down these parts that I discussed earlier. The amygdala, it is the basically acts as a security guard. It's the one that causes the individual to become paranoid. If you've ever been around someone and they kind of their eyes buck up or whatever the case may be when you give them information or you talking to them and they kind of stuck, if you will, that's the amygdala. The amygdala is scanning for threat. Okay. The individual doesn't know that, but that's basically what's happening. Your mirror neurons are coming on. They're trying to match your levels. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. But essentially, the amygdala, it is the CEO of your goals that involves risk, visibility, or if it screams danger. It tries to lock down the building. It basically turns off different parts of your brain to kind of, snap you back into place to keep you safe. Okay. Let me give you an example for that. Let's say you get a phone call and you literally just woke up. Okay. You haven't even had the opportunity to plan your day. This person to hit you with some shocking news or something like that, and instantly your body goes into a panic or stress, etc. This is what we call a amygdala hijack. Your amygdala has been hijacked to match the level of stress that that person is basically experiencing at that moment. If you can catch it before the amygdala pulls you into this stressful state, if you can catch it, you can breathe, calm yourself down. This is not mine. This is not mine. Okay? Tell the person, hey, that's very, disheartening to hear. If you'll give me a moment, I'll give you a call back or whatever the case may be. But I'm going to tell you, that's not how it always goes, guys. We let them hijack our amygdala. We're on the phone for sometimes 20, 30 minutes at a time. And before long, you don't realize that you're just processing that person's cortisol, adrenaline, and stress levels throughout your day. This is literally how it happened. I never had this awareness before until I started recognizing that I was packing on other people's emotional states. Okay. Now let's talk about the reticular activating system. It acts as basically what we call like a mailroom, if you will. It stores information and it sorts through millions of pieces of data every second. It has to filter out information that is not pertinent because if you try to process everything that's coming into your reticular activating system at once, it'll cause what's called cognitive overload and it'll stress you out. So basically, it only lets just a minute of information that you see on a given day, opportunities or threats that what your reticular activating system deems important. This is very important because if you are waiting for that moment where that phone call for that new job is supposed to call you, but you're stressed out about your bills, it'll filter out that information and you'll leave your phone in the car. This is how literally it works, okay? Because it prioritizes only what's immediately important to you at that moment and filters out everything else. Okay, so the next one is the basal ganglia, okay? it acts as what we call, let's say, like a factory worker. Okay, I told you I was going to use layman terms to make sure that this here really flows. Okay, so it takes your repeated actions and grinds them down into automated habits so you can execute them without overthinking. Okay, so remember I told you on video one, when someone sets a new goal in 21 days and they say, hey, I'm going to lose 10 pounds, and within 21 days they drop it and they only lose 1 pound. It's because they have to persist long enough for in their actions for the basal ganglia to take it over and make it an automatic habit where you're eating healthier, exercising, walking, doing it, what needs to be done to get the 10 pounds off, and you persisted in it long enough for it to take it over. So that's how that works. The next one is the autonomic nervous system. Now, this here is basically what houses and wires that entire functioning that I just mentioned of those other parts. It takes all these internal decisions and turns them into physical sensations. Yeah, that's what I was telling you about earlier. When you start to feel certain things, you have to be able to know we have what's called mirror neurons in our brain. You have to be able to recognize whether or not what you're feeling is yours versus the other person, and so that you can disconnect or release it once the person has left your state of awareness. Okay. So these physical sensations, such as racing heart, anxiety, exhaustion, fear, or worry, or they'll crash your body basically. Okay. So I won't get into all that. In order to process your life so that your nervous system has the capacity to hold your dreams, you need to do one thing. You need to get your prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, and your reticular activating system on the same accord. Okay, that's basically how you can be able to reach your goals without experiencing a shutdown or the continuation of starting and stopping different things versus persisting in it, regardless of what life throws at you. Okay. Um, Setting goals is important. Okay. When you set goals, it helps you to feel important. It helps you to feel validated. It feels, that you are making a contribution to life, right? Having your dreams fulfilled is something that makes you feel valued in life. If every time you decide you want to accomplish something in life and you experience a setback, you won't really feel too adept to being able to recognize that you are capable of accomplishing anything. So being able to have your components working in unison with for you is essential. Okay. So how you may say, Coach Regina, I heard you talk a lot about this here and everything like that, but hey, I mean, how do we get to this part? Like I want to be able to make sure that my system is working for me. How do we get to that? Okay. All right. Well, basically is doing what's called nervous system training. Okay. Breath work, um, meditation, grounding outdoors, um, cognitive reframing is another one where you're basically taking experiences rather than becoming so reactive to everything that's happening in life. Taking the 5 minute, a 5 second breather when someone brings something to you to give your brain time to process it. Okay, that's one aspect of it. Okay, that is very, very, very important. Um, Recognizing your window of tolerance, we talked about that in the other video. Okay, involves you being able to stretch yourself as opposed to becoming overwhelmed by life's adversities. Okay, this is basically overcoming fear by taking risk. Okay, you have to get yourself out there and expose yourself. This right here, doing videos, I started out at first, guys, it was like, wow, I don't know if I want to do this, right? But I exposed myself to it. I have a message and I knew that I had something to say, but getting past the fear of being exposed was the other point. Okay, so I mentioned meditation, I mentioned breath work, mentioned grounding, I mentioned exposure. Okay, I mentioned cognitive reframing is another one. If the only story you have is that which was inherited by your grandparents, your mother, your siblings, etc., then you don't have your own message. You don't have your own sense of voice. Okay, if you grew up with words, money is hard, or life is struggle, etc., then you don't have the capacity or the awareness that, look, hey, I can earn my own money. Okay, I don't have to take from others, and I don't have to scam people to get ahead in life, and I don't have to exchange time for money by stressing myself out at a 9 to 5 job. You're only limited by your those systems that I mentioned, those 5 systems capacity to believe that you are safe. Okay, setting goals, taking risk, and challenging yourself is all based on your ability to push forward regardless of what's happening around you. Okay, your environment has its own energetic momentum. Okay, if you're around people that are lazy, that they don't have any goals or ambitions, it will be much harder to persevere towards your desires. You don't have to give up. What you do have to do is you have to differentiate yours versus theirs. Okay, if you're feeling a low sluggish day that day, you have to ask yourself, is this me, or is this a part of my environment that where I'm picking up laziness? Being able to separate the two signals to your brain, oh, okay, we need to give her the momentum or the extra energy that is needed to persevere through to her goal. Okay, so we talked about those different aspects as well. Let me see what else here that I want to talk about when I mention, is your nervous system ready for your dreams? The other one is being a biological match. Now this one here is very, very important. Okay, if you have a goal, right, of creating, let's say you want to earn 6 figures, right? According to David R. Hawkins, he has a concept that talks about what's called an attractor field. I'm gonna make this very, very quickly because the other video was 20 minutes. So I want to make sure I kind of keep them in the same so that I don't extend you guys. Again, continue to watch the videos so that you can process what I'm saying. Take notes on what the nervous system capacity, the 5 different areas that I told you about, so you can expand yourself and get to your goals. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a little bit about the research on this here, which comes from David R. Hawkins' concept on an attractor field. Okay, when we talk about your capacity, the set point, and your homeostasis. When we talk about these different aspects, okay, you have to understand that your biological capacity is basically associated with your energetic state. Okay, it acts like an invisible, powerful magnetic matrix that attracts you to certain fields of influence that organize human behavior, perception, and outcomes. This is very, very important, guys, because if your biology is wired for stress, fear, scarcity, lack, and survival, then you are calibrated at a lower attractor field that causes you to operate from what's called poverty and survival. These particular attractor fields operate from emotions such as shame, guilt, apathy, grief, and fear, or they operate from behavior that is driven by force. I know this because that's where I lived at for so long, where I had to force an outcome in my life versus being able to recognize that I have the biological capacity if I do the work to get there. Okay. So now when we talk about those different parts, and I may have to do another video because again, I don't want to keep you guys too long. But when we talk about those different parts that I just mentioned, the emotions of shame, apathy, grief, fear, stress, worry, etc. These fields operate on scarcity, survival, and limitation. It essentially, this is law. I told you earlier, that there are laws that govern this stuff, guys, and it's deep when I found this out. The biological match is that which is equivalent to a nervous system that is trapped in hyperarousal, which is apathy and depression, or hyperarousal, which is fear and anxiety. When an individual's nervous system set point is calibrated to the chronic stress of poverty, they are literally trapped in a low frequency attractor field. In this particular field, your perception narrows, right? Tunnel vision, and you can only see threats, lack, and immediate crisis. When I began to understand this, guys, I was like, oh my gosh, what this keeps you in? It keeps you in victimizing mode, blame, shame, guilt. The awareness comes in when you're able to take responsibility for your actions and recognizing nobody's doing anything to us, guys. It is ultimately our perception of life that is driving us and acting as a catalyst to continue pulling us towards desired realities that we no longer want to be in. This was literally like the aha moment for me in my life. I'm not waking up stressed out about life, fearful, because that's an actual reality. It's based on the perception and my limited belief system in what has held me back for so long. So, how did I break this, guys? This biological match. Okay, I told you, I gave you the 5 things earlier that I began to practice changing and recognizing. Okay, but here's the thing, it's not easy. I told you 3 years, guys, but I continue to persist in my assumption. I will be wealthy. I will be prosperous. I will have financial stability for my family. I'll be healthy, sound in my mind. I will have supportive relationships. I literally recognize that this is what I want, and there was no gray area there. Okay. There was no, when people say, well, hey, well, what's the alternative? The alternative is that you are choosing the alternative, but the awareness is that I have the ability to have this desired reality because I choose it. And my old blueprint is, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but if I starve it of the myelin that keeps it strong on those neural pathways by continuously persisting in the desired state. Now, what is my desired state? I just mentioned those parts: wealth, stability, soundness, healthy relationships, etc. Right? So what does that look like? I just gave you the contrast. So what does it look like? Let's talk about the emotions there. Okay, that was the low capacity. Now we're going to talk about the different set point, which is the high capacity. Okay, the high capacity is where my intention is desired to be, which is the attractor field above that in Hawkins scale. It is expanded window of tolerance, wealth, and creation. This particular attractor field it stems around emotions of willingness, or a state of willingness, acceptance, and reason. Oh, here we go now. We're going to get into this, guys. I'm going to go a couple of more minutes over so I can give you guys, because I don't want to give you the negative without giving you the positive. That's the law of polarity. Remember, I told you our life is governed by laws, okay? The law of polarity, okay? You got the other end of the spectrum that I just mentioned: the apathy, the fear, the stress, the worry, right? Now let's talk about the other end of the spectrum: uh, emotions of, watch this, joy, peace, gladness, acceptance, kindness, compassion. You operate from power versus force. They do not fight against anything. This is where the wealthy and the elite are living, guys, and we're not aware of this stuff. They don't fight against anything because they naturally attract opportunities, solutions, and abundance, because the individual's worldview or perception, as I mentioned earlier, is rooted in alignment and possibility. What does the biological match look like? This corresponds to a regulated nervous system with a massive window of tolerance. When your baseline set point is calibrated to safety and stability, you naturally resonate with these higher attractive fields because you aren't wasting, energy, frequency, vibration. You aren't wasting neural bandwidth on immediate survival any longer. You have the energetic power to hold long term visions, tolerate financial risk, and bounce back from failures without collapsing. God, I don't know about you guys, but this was like the wow factor for me. And it was something that I realized I have to share this with people, because if you don't have the awareness of where your energetic state, or where your attractive field is, you will be like I was, living in a victimizing state of fear, stress, and the illusion that life is against you, when the reality is that you just have not adopted the tools that are necessary to shifting your reality to your desired state. Guys, if you stay with me to the end of this video, like, subscribe, even comment if you want to hear more of this, because I have more, because I do the research, I do the work, guys, so that I can be able to pass this on to you. I want you to know that you have the capacity to live the life that you desire. Fear keeps us limited. Joy and acceptance expands our capacity to see life clearly. Okay? Your brain is filtering out, actively filtering out. You got to catch this: wealth building opportunities, because those opportunities feel unsafe. When you train it to understand that the invisible is just a survival mound, it's the unsafe part of you. I'm capable of accomplishing anything, and I will get through this and I'll survive this. To change your financial reality, to change your health, your relationships, your health, you have to shift your internal energetic and biological state. This has been the cornerstone of recognizing, is your nervous system ready for your dreams? My name is Coach Regina. I want to thank you guys for watching. Take care.